Hello and welcome back. I'm so glad you decided to click on this video. Today we are doing January's wrap up. I have a whole new spreadsheet that I've been using this year so far, and it's really cool the way it lays out all my books. So I am excited to share with you everything I read in the month of January. I read 16-ish books. I DNF'd 2. We'll get to it later. I read 3,144 pages. I listened to 36.15 hours of audiobook. My average rating was 3.9, and I DNF'd 2 books. I listened to 6 audiobooks. I read 3 ebooks, and I read 6 physical books, and one book I read was a combination of one or more of those. I had 1 2-star book, 1 2.5-star book, 2 3-star books, 2 3.5-star books, 2 4-star books, 3 4.5-star books, and 3 5-star books. Whew. That was quite a lot of information. That was kind of crazy. I also read 11 fiction books and 5 nonfiction books, and that is a percentage of 31% nonfiction books. Okay, so what did I read, you might be asking? Well, let us start at the beginning. Actually, we're not going to start at the beginning. I'm going to start with the 2 books I DNF'd, just get those out of the way. So the first one I DNF'd was Wake Up and Open Your Eyes by Clay McLeod Chapman. This is a horror book that I had the audiobook of, and it was very graphic. This one is kind of about the culture, like in America right now. This man who is kind of lost his parents to the cult of fax news, and he basically is trying to go save them from themselves because there seems to be a demonic possession come like from the TV based around this news network. So, it was very interesting. It was getting a little graphic for me, and I just was not having a good time, and it was long. I DNF'd that about 60% of the way through. And the other one, sadly, was The Last Session by Julia Bartz. She's the author of The Writing Retreat, which came out, I believe, 2 years ago, and I loved. So I had high hopes for this one. Unfortunately, it was just nothing like new. I feel like I'd read it before, and I was also very confused about some of the main characters' choices. This is about a woman who is a social worker, and she works in a psychiatric hospital. And one day this woman comes in who looks exactly like her, and this woman had been a movie star in her youth, and the big thing is that they look just alike, and it's weird. And then one day, the woman ends up just leaving because it's not necessarily like they're not required to stay, it's voluntary. And so, yeah, she just leaves. And so the social worker is trying to like track her down. And maybe this is a me thing, but I was just like, the lack of professionalism, I couldn't get past it. I just couldn't get past it. So those were 2 that I DNF'd, but I did have lots of other good stuff. So let's go ahead and get started on those. So the first book that I read was Death in the Downline by Maria Abrams. This was funny. This was just a quirky little book. It is a little murder mystery, kind of cozy, that follows a woman who gets involved in a multi-level marketing company. And, the whole her upline is getting, someone gets murdered, and they're all kind of like using this product, and it's just very funny if you know anything about the kind of like MLM scene, and whether you've ever been in one or you just enjoy that anti-MLM content like I do. Yeah, it was funny. It wasn't like groundbreaking, but I enjoyed reading it. It was fun. The next one I read was The Mother Next Door by Andrea Dunlop, and I gave this 5 stars. This was incredible. So this is nonfiction. It's very much narrative nonfiction though, and it follows 3 different women who have Munchausen by proxy, which is also called medical child abuse. So it was really sad, and Andrea Dunlop has a personal connection to this disease, I guess. I don't think it's really a disease. I can't remember what they ended up calling it. But she follows this man who is a former sheriff, and he is like specializes in these medical child abuse cases. If you don't know what Munchausen by proxy is, it is where you are intentionally making someone else ill for attention, basically. And yeah, it was incredibly powerful. It was a page turner for sure. I could not get away from it. Like, I just constantly wanted to be reading it, which is, a sign of a really good book. And Andrea Dunlop has written quite a bit of fiction, but this, I think, was her first foray into nonfiction, and she knocked it out of the park. The third book I read was A Great Country by Shilpi Samaya Gowda, and this was my book club pick for January. And we had some really good stuff to say over there. If you are not a member on Fable, go ahead and join. We would love to have you for February. So this was about a little boy, well, I guess he's like 12, and he is kind of socially awkward, and he is Indian. He ends up getting like attacked by police because he was flying a drone near an airport. But it was completely innocent, but they're trying him as an adult, and it's just kind of showing the absolute unfairness of the justice system and how we target Black and brown people. Additionally, it was so like on point for kind of what America looks like right now, and kind of why that orange guy won the election. Because a lot of the people who you would think would be, of course they're going to vote Democrat, like a lot of immigrants, they don't see themselves in the, way that these conservatives describe immigrants. Like, oh, well, I came here legally, so I'm not one of them. But like at the end of the day, like they don't care. Like they're gonna do what they're gonna do. And so it was just the first like chapter really gets into that a little bit. And I was like floored. I thought this was incredible and a really good book for anyone to read. It was just so good. And it seemed like everyone, for the most part, really enjoyed this too in the book club, so that made me happy. A few of these I'm going to go through kind of quickly because I either don't have anything to say or I've already forgotten about it. So one of those is We Would Never by Tova Mervis. This book is coming out in February, and I read it at the beginning of the month, and I don't really remember too much about it. It is like a thriller, but it was very slow, and I just didn't. It took me a while to get through, and I just was not that engaged with it. It's kind of just your run-of-the-mill thriller, but slower, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. I gave that book 2.5 stars. The fifth book I read was Atomic Habits by James Clear, and this was a book that I read for another book club that I host. And for this month, I run this at my bar studio, and the leaders there were asking me if I could do this book instead of something else. Normally we read fiction, but they asked if we could do this. So it wasn't something that I picked, and I ended up not really liking it. I gave it 2 stars. There was a lot of like diet talk in it, which was just not my favorite. And even though they were just using like losing weight as like examples of habits to change, it just was not like something that I really needed to hear. I try to stay away from that stuff. It also feels like it could have been a listicle on BuzzFeed. Like this was just too long. It was like 250 pages, but personally, I mean, that was too long. There was so much repetition, and I like the idea behind it, which is like changing teeny tiny habits. Suddenly you've made a huge change in your life. But I don't think it's like a novel concept, and I don't really feel like this book helped me in any way, but it helped lots of other people, so I'm happy for them. Next, I read The Secret History of the Rape Kit by Pagan Kennedy, and this I gave 4 stars to. I listened to the audiobook, and it was narrated by Claire Danes, which I really enjoyed. So this doesn't need a lot of explanation. It's kind of laid out there what this is about. I found this to be interesting. I did, however, read in some reviews after that some parts of this are sort of glossed over or kind of sugar-coated a little bit. So that was just, something to keep in mind, I guess, when reading it, but I found it to be interesting and it definitely held my attention. Next, I read You'll Never Believe Me by Carrie Farrell, and this I gave 3 stars to. This is a memoir of someone who, in the kind of like early aughts, who was known as the hipster grifter. And I was like vaguely familiar with her, but really I didn't enjoy this a whole lot because it seems like she did a lot of things like with no remorse, as far as like stealing from people she knows, stealing from people she doesn't know. And additionally, it seemed like she used that she was adopted from Korea by white parents and that she really like had no idea really about her Korean side. It seems like she used that trauma to kind of justify like being socially inept and like stealing from people and not really having any regard for other people's feelings, and like that just didn't sit well with me. Like I definitely think it's one of those things that's like, okay, this is kind of an explanation but not an excuse. And so I just didn't feel like there was any sort of like, I had a hard time feeling empathetic towards her and what she was going through because of how blatantly she had clearly no problem harming other people. I don't know. 2 books that I'm kind of gonna speed through: Something in the Walls by Daisy Pierce and Youth Juice by E.K. Sathu. And I read these for Winterween, hosted by Gabby Reeds, and I did a whole vlog, so I will put it up on whichever side it goes. And if you are interested in hearing my thoughts on those, feel free to go watch that vlog. For my other book club, I swear I just have the 3. We read Severance by Ling Ma. This is like a dystopian book that kind of feels like The Stand. I got a lot of that kind of vibe because there is just this illness and it makes you like kind of do like repetitious things until you die, basically. And so it definitely gave me like good versus evil vibes, and yeah, it was really good. I gave it 5 stars. Wow, I'm so sorry. My little light attachment to my camera just died, so hopefully it's not too dark. um, so yeah, I gave that 5 stars. I really no, I didn't. I gave that 4.5 stars. I really liked it. I definitely recommend it. Next, I read The House of My Mother by Sherry Frankie, and this I gave 5 stars too. So this is a memoir of Sherry Frankie, obviously, who is the daughter of Ruby Frankie. If you are aware of the 8 Passengers YouTube channel from began in like 2015, I believe, and was really controversial because of the way that Ruby treated her children on camera. And then she got involved in what is essentially a cult and was like seriously abusing her children. And so she and the cult leader are now in prison. But this is kind of the story of just like her life growing up and how she kind of got out on her own. And I thought this was really interesting. And I never watched like family vlogging. Like I'm not a kid person, so I have really no interest in watching like vlogs of families. And so I was still interested in this story because I remember when the story broke and I was just like shocked and appalled by what was going on. So that was definitely a hard one to read, but it was really, really great. Next up is Our Beautiful Boys by Samir Pandya. And this book is not out yet. It comes out in this month, February. And so I gave this one 4.5 stars. Really, really enjoyed this. It reminded me a lot of A Great Country, which I read earlier in the month, in its kind of themes and subject matter. So this is about 3 boys who are all on the football team. Now, one of them's Indian, one of them is Hispanic, and one of them is white. And the Indian one had just kind of been like recruited to the football team. And before that, he like played golf, but he was kind of like a nerd. And so once he's on the football team, he's just like really good, like naturally. And so he kind of gets in with this group and like becomes friends with them. And, you know, he ends up going to a party one night with the other two boys, and there's like a mountain area with like a cave, and up in the cave they go up there, and there's also another boy who none of them really care for. He's very annoying, he's kind of a jerk, and so they come back down to the party, and about 20 minutes later the other kid comes down just absolutely beat up, bruised, and he like had fell into a cactus, so he's got all this stuff. And basically the book is trying to figure out like what happened up there, because no one's really telling the truth. There's a lot of like racial stuff at play. And I was intrigued. I really enjoyed reading it, like actually reading it. There were like 8 characters that we're following pretty well, and that wasn't like necessarily overwhelming, but it just did feel like we weren't able to really get super involved in the mindset of everyone, because there were just so many characters and so many like subplots, and I wish maybe we had just like a little bit less of that and could focus like a little bit more on like specific characters, even if it's not all of them. It felt like the book kind of touched on like a lot of kind of hot topics, and I just don't think it needed to. I think we had a good story like on its face. Like we didn't need to kind of look for other stuff to talk about. And I didn't really like the ending. I just thought it was kind of lackluster. But again, I gave this 4.5 stars. The reading experience, I had a great time reading this. Then I listened to the audiobook of A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. This is one I had seen a lot of booktubers reading like a year or two ago, and I really enjoyed it. So it's about a woman who is not super in touch with her mom, but she ends up going to stay with her after losing her job, and her mom is acting very strange. And I feel like that's all you need to know. It's horror, and I guess it's more thriller than horror. It's kind of somewhere in between. It's kind of blurry lines to begin with, but I thought it was great. I really enjoyed this author's writing. I know she has a lot of books, and I definitely am interested in reading more from her because I really thought this was good. And the last book that I read all of in January is Monstrilio by Gerardo Samano Cordova. And this I gave 4.5 stars to. Spoiler alert, this is going to be in a vlog coming up, so you'll get all my thoughts there. But I really enjoyed this. It was kind of literary horror, and it definitely brought out emotions in me. There's a lot about grief. There is just a lot going on, but I thought this was incredible. The only reason I didn't give it a full 5 stars was it was just a little too weird, because the plot is very weird. A woman whose young son dies, she kind of cuts out his lung and keeps it in a jar and starts feeding it, and it starts growing, and then things kind of get out of control. So definitely weird, but I liked it a lot. It was really, really good, and yeah, you'll get my full thoughts if you watch that vlog, which should be out pretty soon. So, thank you for listening to me yap about all the books that I read in January. Hopefully something on here will spike your interest and maybe convince you to read it, or convince you not to read something if I didn't like it. I want to know what your favorite book is from the month of January. How many books did you read? Did you feel like you had a good month? Bad month? I want to hear all of it. Once again, if you would like to join my book club on Fable, it will be linked in the description and again in the comments. This month we are reading The Drowning Woman by Robin Harding. I haven't started it yet, but this is one that has been on my radar for quite a long time. So I am very excited to get started with it, and I would love to have you over there as well. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, I would love it if you would, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!